What's up guys? So today we are going to be working on the two-step on the car. I'm going to go over the steps you need to take to install the two-step on your LS engine. Specifically today we're working on a 2012 Chevy Caprice. If you want to see more on this car later, like and subscribe to my channel and you'll see more on this car. But if you're only here for the LS part of it and you want to see how to do two-step, here's how it goes. So the first thing you're going to want to do is find a good mounting spot for your MSD 2-step. I chose to mount mine right here. It's easy to see and I have access to the adjustments right here. You want to make sure wherever you mount it, you have access to these adjustments. So when you want to make a change, you can make a change, as well as being able to see this red LED is helpful if you're ever trying to troubleshoot an issue with your two-step. So this two-step is super simple to install. So coming off of it, you're going to have this blue and a white wire, which we'll get to that later. And you're going to have the wires that go to your coil packs. Right here, two ends. It's really simple. You have one shorter end and you have one longer end. I'm gonna run the shorter one obviously to the closer side, and we'll run the longer one to the driver's side. On your coil pack you have your plug right here, so you're gonna unplug your coil pack right here. Pull that apart, real simple. And then on your MSD 2-step, you have this plug here. All you're gonna do is plug that one in there and plug that one in there. You're gonna do the same thing on the driver's side over here. So you have your coil pack plug right here. You're gonna disconnect it. Take your new 2-step plug, plug it right in, and then plug these other two right in together, and that part is done. So that part is obviously super simple. The next part is going to take a little bit of thinking, but really not much. So you have your white and your blue wire. If you want to wire it to a button, which is what I'm doing, you're going to use your blue wire, and MSD gives you a long blue wire to plug into this. All you're going to do is you're going to plug this in, plug that into there, and then you're going to route this wire inside to wherever you want your button, or if you want you can wire it to your brake switch or whatever. That's up to you. I'll let you decide on that. I'm going to wire it to a button on my steering wheel, which I will show in a minute. Inside the car, once you mount your button, you're going to run that blue wire to your button, and the other side of the button is going to go to a ground. I've already done all of that, and I'm going to show you where I put my ground and everything in the end of this video. So right now, we're going to go ahead and try it out, see if everything works, and then we'll go a little more in depth on the button placement and how I got the button here if you're interested in seeing that. Okay, so we have our two-step set to 2500 right now. We're gonna I'm just gonna put it in neutral for now because I don't have the torque converter for it. There you have it. That's your two-step. So the install is simple enough. The hardest part is routing that wire and finding a place for your button. Once you find it though, you're good to go. Okay, so now that we got everything installed, the next part of the video, I'm gonna go over how I ran the button on the steering wheel for a Caprice or a G8. If you So if you want to put your button on a steering wheel, you're going to have to run it to one of the wires on the clock spring. And for me, I chose to run the wire to the LED wire, the wire that runs power to your LEDs in your steering wheel. So I will no longer have lights on my steering wheel, but that is fine. Everything else will function like normal. And I'll have my button on my steering wheel for 2-step. And the reason you have to run it through the clock spring is because if you do not, when you turn your wheel, you will be twisting up a wire if you try to run a wire straight to your steering wheel. If you don't want to run on your steering wheel, you can put it down by your shifter. You can put it just wherever that it's not on the steering wheel. You can do that, that's fine. But if you want to know how to put it on the steering wheel, keep watching and we're going to go over that now. So if you are specifically putting this on a G8 or Caprice, for me, I routed my wire right below the steering shaft input. I'm sorry, you can't see it very well, but there's the blue wire laying down there. I need to zip tie it up. So right below the steering shaft, there is a rubber boot with a bunch of wires going through it. I drilled a small hole in that rubber boot and I ran this wire through there. So that's how I routed mine. I'm sure there's many different ways you could route your wire in there, but that's how I did mine. First thing you're going to need to do is disconnect your negative battery terminal from your battery so that your airbag doesn't blow up in your face. So to remove your airbag, you're going to have to put the key in the ignition, and the key will be stuck in the ignition because your battery is disconnected. But once you hook your battery up, you'll be able to pull your key out again. So turn the key on so that you're able to turn your wheel. And on the back of the wheel, you have this hole here, and there's a lever in there to release the airbag, and you need to stick a screwdriver or whatever you're using. For me, I'm actually using a piece of a screwdriver, and pry it up, and then you need to turn the wheel. Sound like the other side just came undone again, or pop back into place. Turn the wheel 180 degrees and pop the other side. There you have it. So that will pop your steering wheel out, so you have access to all of this. Yours might look a little different. I have a couple additional wires for the paddle shifters right here. So to get these plugs off, you're going to want to pull this orange piece up like that, and then they should pull right out. Don't be like me. The first time I did this, before looking it up, I didn't know how to do it, and I broke this one. So this one can come out on its own pretty easily. Next, you're going to have a ground wire, which mine already fell off. The ground wire will come off of this little tab right here. And that's it for removing your airbag. Next, to remove the steering wheel, you're going to need to first unplug this plug down here, like that. And then you have a T50 Torx bit right here that you're going to have to loosen. I've always been able to just hold the steering wheel on my own and break it loose. If you can't do that, then you might need a friend or somebody to come help you. To be honest, mine's maybe a little looser than it should be, but if you're strong, you should be able to break it on your own and get that out. Once you have that out, technically you're supposed to replace this every time you do that, but I'm definitely not going to do that. So once you have that out, I have to disconnect my paddle shifters. And then you should be able to pull your steering wheel off with a little bit of jiggling. And once you have it to where it's loose, guide these wires through, and be careful that you're not spinning or twisting the clock spring behind the steering wheel, because if you do that, I read that you can damage it. You can see mine twisted a little bit, but only a little bit, so it should be okay. Like, you have a little bit of play. You can move it side to side a little bit, but don't be twisting it and pulling it off or anything, because you'll damage it. So we got the steering wheel off. We'll go to the workbench and look at this thing some more. Okay, so you're gonna want to pop the back of this steering wheel off. And to do that, you're gonna have 2 screws right here that are holding it in place. One here, one here. You take those out. This back plate, if you have paddle shifters, the back plate with your paddle shifters will come off. So once I have this removed, this ground right here is for my paddle shifters. If you don't have paddle shifters, you should not have to disconnect this to remove this back plate. Back plate is removed. Ground for the screw. We'll go ahead and put that back in there so we don't lose it. Okay, to remove your switches, you're gonna have these 3 screws right here. 1, 2, and 3. Once you have those 3 screws out, you should be able to pull this up. And it'll come off just like that. Okay, so after some help from a friend, I found that the yellow wire right here is the wire that powers the LEDs on the steering wheel. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna steal that wire and use it for our 2-step. That way our 2-step wire is not getting twisted around the steering wheel when we turn. And if you saw before, I had this red button in here before, and I just ran a wire straight through thinking it would be okay, and when I turned, sure enough, it ripped the wire right out of this plug, and I had no 2-step. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull back the sleeving on this. We're gonna snip that yellow wire, and we're gonna snip it over here as well, so it's not going to this LED either. And we're gonna run that wire to my button that I'm gonna use. This is just a random button that I got from, it actually came out of one of these like LED packs. It was a sample button right here. So that's the button I'm using. You can order a momentary push button from Amazon, and these ones are super cheap on there. You could use that. So I got this sleeving pulled back, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull out this yellow wire right here. And I'm gonna cut it, leaving room to where I can solder back onto it in a future date if I decide that everything I'm doing right now is a mistake and I want my lights back. So with that room right there, that should be plenty. My switch is gonna go right here, so that should give me some room to go to the switch. And then from the switch, it'll go to the ground right here. Add a piece of heat shrink to this wire as well for after we solder it. Okay, so on our button, I wired the yellow wire to one side, and I wired the other wire to ground, and for ground I wired it to my paddle shifter ground. I didn't have a connector for it, so I just soldered it right to the one that my paddle shifters was going to. So that'll give us our ground, and that'll be our signal wire to our 2-step. Last thing I need to do is cut this open and cut the yellow wire so it's not still going to the LEDs. So I just put a slit in that, pulled the yellow wire out and snipped it, and I'm just gonna put it back in there. So there's not gonna be no power or anything going through this wire, so I wouldn't worry about them touching or anything. So now that we have that wired up, I'm going to put my push button that I have back in here. And I just drilled a hole in this to fit that button in there. Different buttons might require a bigger hole or more grinding or drilling or whatever you need, but for me, I just had to drill this one small hole. Tighten it down with the needle nose a little bit. And you know, if your car is really nice and stuff, maybe you'll want a better button, but for me, I don't care. That's gonna be fine for me. So we got the yellow and the black wire coming out right there. This is pushed back on there. The button's there. The black wire is going to this ground right here. And with that, we could put our screws back in the back of this and then put our backing on and put the screws back in that, and then we'll go back into the car. So inside the car, on the other side of this clock spring, we have a purple wire. This purple wire is the same wire that went to your yellow wire on your steering wheel. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna snip this wire right here. Leaving room on both ends if we ever want to connect it again. And we're gonna run this wire here to our 2-step, which I have a wire right here that I already routed down there. So I'm gonna hook these two wires together. This one will stay empty. And then this wire will go to our 2-step. So we have that wire soldered and connected to our wire that's going to go to our 2-step. And now we're just going to connect that to our blue wire that we ran through the firewall. And then that's going to be it. We'll install everything back on, and we should be ready to try it out. So we're going to route our wires, carefully not to spin that clock spring, back through this hole. It has a groove, so your steering wheel will only go back on one way. So before you hook all your wires back up, you're gonna wanna put your T50 bolt back in. Hand tight should be fine. It's just a steering wheel. It's not that important. Just kidding, just kidding. You gotta tighten it tight. So this thing torques to like some super high number, I think. And I'm not gonna do that. I'll show you what I'm gonna do. So what I'm gonna do is hold my steering wheel I'll lock this so it's not moving around on me. I like to hold it with my knees and one hand, and I'll tighten it down best I can, and that should be good enough for that. If you got paddle shifters, hook up your wires for your paddle shifters. If you don't have paddle shifters, buy paddle shifters. This brown wire right here is your horn. Again, like I said earlier, that's going to go to right here. The other two are obvious, they're color coded. Blue connection right here, and then our yellow connection right here. Once you have all those in, you're going to line the steering wheel up just like that. Push it on. That's it, boys. So steering wheel, airbags back on, and we got our new button right here. Thanks for watching. Maybe we'll get a better video of 2-step once I get my torque converter put in and we won't be sitting in neutral. That's going to be it for today. Please like and subscribe, and see you next time.